Today I want to talk a little bit about the Great Commission because I've heard some things recently that really got me thinking about it and considering different viewpoints regarding using music or other art forms to promote the kingdom. So our scriptural reading for today will come from Matthew 28 and verse 18. And it says, "And Jesus spoke with them and said to them, All authority has been given to me in heaven and in earth. In the same way my Father has sent me, I am sending you. So go, make apprentices of all ethnic groups, and immerse them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Spirit of separateness, and instruct them to keep everything that I have commanded you. And know this, I am with you always, even until the end of time. So be it." So this is our scripture for today, and what I want to talk about is recently, well, not just recently, but it's kind of resurfaced recently. There has been some conversations regarding very, very few musicians in so-called Christian music that are pushing the boundaries of performance. And what I mean is where they perform. I think it's kind of universally accepted that Christian musicians overwhelmingly perform in churches, usually large churches. If it's not at a church, it's at a venue sponsored by a church or churches and advertised by those churches and on Christian radio or Christian TV networks. In other words, most of the time, Christian music is for Christians. And is that right? My question is that right? Is the Great Commission about entertaining believers? No, it's not. It's about going to all parts of the world, all ethnic groups, all creeds and colors, and telling them of what Jesus did for us. And so some in the Christian church community are condemning these few artists who are pushing the limits. They not only push the limits musically and vocally and lyrically, but they push the limits as far as where they are willing to perform. Recently, an artist performed on some network television talk shows, like the late night shows and the daytime talk shows, went on to these shows and performed from their new album to the outrage of Christians. How can that outrage Christians? How can you turn on your TV during the day and see a TV program that has maybe some negative viewpoints on Christianity, allowing a Christian to perform Christian music? How can you dismiss that? How can you say that that's bad? That artist is proclaiming Christ to an audience that doesn't hear Christ often, or maybe ever. Or how can you turn on the TV in the late evening and see the late night talk shows, which are generally not very good as far as morals? And how can you turn those on and see a Christian artist singing about Jesus and say that that's a bad thing? I just don't understand it. We are to go and to proclaim the good news to the world, not to go and entertain Christians. And that's what it is. We might kid ourselves and say that if we are touring around and performing in churches that we are spreading the gospel because the attendees of the church invite their non-Christian friends and non-Christian co-workers or classmates to these performances. That might be true, but just look at how it's set up. When a Christian artist starts a tour, what do? They advertise on Christian radio, Christian TV, They go onto Christian programs. They talk about their tour and their album. They're focused on Christians. And why? Well, I don't want to be blunt. I don't want to be too blunt or too confrontational here, but to be perfectly honest, the reason that Christian artists target Christians is because that's where their money is coming from. Christians, for the most part, will be buying their music. Christians, for the most part, will be going to their concerts. So that's where their money is. And it's the same way with their tour. When you see where they tour, how often do you see Christian artists tour in places where there's not many Christians? I mean, really, how many times have you heard of big Christian bands or singers, very popular, going and extensively touring places where there are not many Christians? You rarely hear of it. Occasionally, an artist will go to Europe and do a couple of shows in Europe, or they will go and do a couple of shows in Africa or some other place. But look how they tour in America. I mean, they go full force. They hit almost every city, and they are all over the place because that's where their money is. And it's sad to say it, but that's the truth. They are there to make money. I'm not saying that they don't want to glorify God and that they're lying or that they're not truthful, but you have to look at the evidence. You just don't see them touring extensively in these places that need Jesus. And you don't see them performing in places that need Jesus. And that's the point of our life. That's the point of our life. So then when a few artists go in and they actually perform in places that need Jesus, we condemn them. We say that they're terrible, they're bad. We should avoid them. They're boycotted. And it's just ridiculous. When I read these stories, it makes me sick at my stomach, because we are here to tell people who don't believe in Jesus or who have not heard of Jesus about him and what he did and what he's doing for us. And we use our art form to do that, no matter where you are. So an artist performs in a bar. Those people need that more than anybody. So an artist performs in a late night show. The people watching that need it more than anybody, because those are the people who maybe have a mental belief. Many people have a mental belief in Christianity. They believe in it in general, in their mind, but it hasn't transformed them. They don't have a relationship. So maybe a lot of those people watching these television shows, maybe they don't have a relationship. They might have a mental belief in something, but they don't have a relationship. And that music that they see, that artist that they see, and that music that they hear might be the thing that makes something snap in their mind and makes them pursue it deeper. So I don't understand, other than it's just about money. It's about money. There's an organization behind it all that tells us what is Christian, what is not, what is good, what is not, and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And that organization is there to make money. We often follow it blindly. The people who follow it blindly, are not terrible people. I'm not saying that all of these artists are horrible people or money hungry or anything like that. I'm not saying that. But the organization that created this benchmark of what is Christian and what is not, and what is good and what is bad, and what is acceptable and what is unacceptable, that is designed to make money for a purpose. And we need to question that organization. It's actually probably a group of many organizations that all work together for one goal, and that is to make themselves money. So when it comes to what is good, what is bad, what is acceptable, what is unacceptable for the church, for the people, the believers, there's only one source, and that's the Bible. Where does the Bible say that you can only perform your art? You can only display your art to believers? Where does the Bible say that we can only use our God-given gifts to uplift believers? Of course, we want to uplift believers, but the whole goal of our life is to go and make apprentices, not to just lead people in a little prayer, the prayer of salvation. That's the beginning. That's not the end. That's the beginning. The end is to make apprentices, to help them grow, to help them become mature believers. So that's our goal. But the first part of it is to reach the people. We need to reach the people. And to reach the people, you have to go to the people. You can't sit there in your church and say, the people need to come to us. Jesus said, go and make apprentices. He didn't say, have people come to you and make them apprentices. He said, go to the people, all ethnic groups, all countries, all regions. Go to the people who need him and tell them about him. So when I saw these comments in the news, in the so-called Christian news online, condemning these Christian artists, these very few Christian artists who are brave enough to stand up and go to these people, to minister to these people, I had to make this message. Because it really irritates me when I see that. It's ridiculous. We are supposed to do exactly what they are doing. And I wish that every Christian artist alive now would do the same thing. If every Christian artist would do that same thing, then our world would be a lot different. They would be reaching so many people. If they advertised their tours on secular radio stations, if they advertised their albums and their tours in television programs that don't usually accept the Christian belief, if they pursued performances in places that don't usually have Christian artists, if all of them would do it, think of the difference that could be made. Think of the huge difference that could be made in so many lives. Instead, they choose to entertain Christians in church and call that ministry. It's very sad. It's very, very sad. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on this, and I hope and I pray that when you hear this, that God will touch your heart and your mind, and that maybe if you have these feelings that you don't agree with these artists who are doing this, because maybe you saw it in Christian news or you heard about it in a Christian forum or something like that, like I did, if you have those negative feelings about them, to stop and to think about it and look where Jesus went and look what Jesus did and look who Jesus talked to. Did he just only speak to believers? No, his job was to make believers, and that's our job as well. So I pray that you can receive this message, and that maybe over time we can make a difference, and more of these artists with great talent and great love for God will make similar steps to reach people instead of entertaining Christians. God bless.